Hey guys, it's one of those weeks again where I have yet again been inspired by my own students to talk to you guys about something kind of random. Lately, a lot of my students have been doing what I call leveling up. Typically, when I'm teaching students, I will just kind of teach them until I feel like they have mastered an etude or an exercise or a piece to the full capacity at the level that they are playing in. But you get to a certain point where you start to think to yourself as the teacher, they're playing well enough now that I can feel that they're searching for more. You can kind of feel like they're getting a little bit bored of what they're doing, and they're kind of wondering why it is that they are playing all the right notes with all the right dynamics, with all the right articulations, but for some reason it doesn't sound as professional as when I play the same thing. What is the missing piece then? Leveling up, at least to me, is when you've maxed out your stats for a certain level, and then when you get to the next level, you feel like you're starting from scratch again. You have to grind your levels again. I'm complete video game nerd. I 100% am aware of that. Everything from learning about nuances, learning about expression, style, the music history, the context, chordal analysis and stuff like that, all of that will fundamentally affect even how you produce your tone, because then you start thinking about tone color too, right? When do you change the tone color to what type of color, to what kind of palette of colors? Suddenly everything changes. I just want to put it out there that it does feel really weird and you do feel like a beginner again. I did talk about this part before where I said in another video, I can't even remember which video it was now, I had to go back and do long tones again, like beginner style, when I got into music school. And I was like, what the heck? This feels very elementary to me. Is my teacher saying that I can't play the flute anymore? That's what I keep trying to tell my students, is every time I teach them something that I know is just one level above where they're at, where I'm trying to push them into the next level of playing, I always tell them, I am aware that it feels weird. I am aware that it kind of makes you feel like you can't play the flute anymore, but just know that this is a rite of passage. If you're feeling this way, it's a good feeling. It means that you are pushing yourself into the next level, into like a higher, more advanced professional way of playing. Now, the second thing that happens is that you still have residual habits from when you were more of a beginner. This comes to light the most often when people start to develop more like embouchure strength to withstand the resistance that you feel in the higher registered notes. You'd spend all this time practicing high registered notes. You spend all this time practicing your really high harmonics. You build up the muscle strength, but then when you go to play like a scale, or if you're playing exercise or some sort of etude repertoire that has rips that go up to the higher octave, you may find that your initial reaction is to just like push as hard as you can when you get up to those high notes. So you'll have this beautiful tone for like your low register, middle register, and then suddenly when you get into your high register, it's like you're screeching. That beautiful tone is just completely gone. Then you go back to doing long tones and you're like, my tone sounds fine. And then I go back to what I was playing and it still sounds like screeching. What I've discovered is that it's because it's your old habit kicking in when you go to play the high notes in the context of your scales, exercises, etudes, and repertoire. At least my brain and my students' brains. We see it as long tones is like a separate thing from playing an etude. So your brain does not necessarily make the connection that these high notes in this etude are just as easy now as these high notes in your long tones. You actually have to make that connection for your brain. The way I have combated this is by purposefully playing high long tones right before I play that passage in whatever it is I'm studying. And I try to mimic how I feel in the long tones in the actual piece. Now that doesn't always work. So what you do is you do this and then you kind of observe what you're doing. Are you pushing too much? Where are you pushing too much? Are you angling the airstream too high now compared to how you did these long tones? Then you go back to these long tones and you observe them again. Then you come back to here and you again try to apply directly what you did here to here. Essentially what you are doing is you are practicing long tones and your repertoire at the same time. Rather than like normally we would practice our long tones first as a warm-up, and then you spend the rest of your practice session just going through your etudes, repertoire stuff, and you don't do long tones in the middle of all of that. So that's how I've been doing it, and it worked for me, and it seems to be working for my students too, which is why I'm now telling you guys. There are some things that you have made muscle memory, but only for like long tones, for like certain exercises, but you haven't made that muscle memory for everything you play. It's as if it's like your awkward puberty phase of playing an instrument, where you're not like totally a kid, but you're not like totally a professional either. You're kind of like in between. You're a teenager, essentially. There's nothing wrong with it. It's completely normal. I went through it. Every professional has gone through it. Everyone has an awkward stage. The third and last thing I want to talk about is when we make that leveling up transition into playing with nuance and with expression. In my own experience, I truly learned expression and nuance on my own. I learned it in my own practice session. I did have awkward lessons with my teachers where we explored style and expression and nuance. But ultimately, I felt that experimenting with style and experimenting with nuance, expression, that is actually a really intimate experience, because you are truly putting your own artistic spin on a piece of music that has been played for centuries. We play classical music here. Even modern music for us is like 50 years old, okay? You always kind of get this feeling like, what if I am expressing it wrong? Because all of these other people have done it. What right do I have to put my own expression on this piece of music? So what I have opted to do as a teacher is to call it out for what it is and tell my students that I am about to teach you something that will push you to the next level. On top of it already feeling weird because it feels foreign, it's also going to be really freaking awkward to have me sitting here listening to you and watching you. It's like if you were always painting in black and white, but suddenly your teacher gave you a palette of colors and said, now fill in the drawing that you have in front of you with the correct colors. But the way you do it won't exactly match the way I do it. But here, go ahead and do it. In that situation, I'm going to guess that most people would really rather not do it with their teachers looking over their shoulder, right? What if you colored someone's hair green? But what if everyone before you colored it brown? Your teacher would be like, yo, what the heck you doing? That is wrong color for that person's hair. No one's ever painted this person's hair green. It's that, but in music, which is why it's always a bit of an awkward lesson. I'm giving you a palette of colors that you've never seen before, and I'm telling you, have fun. This is how I would do it. Now it's your turn. You've never painted with those colors before. You don't know exactly how they mix together. Which part do you make darker? Which part do you make lighter? And now it's not just black to white. Now it's like little shades in between them. Any artist will tell you that they got better through just practicing, just doing it all the time, just experimenting, allowing yourself to make mistakes. You'll shade it one way, then you'll look at it and be like, that doesn't look quite right. Let me try it again and shade it another way. You can do that too. In fact, that is what you do in your own practice session. You'll do a crescendo a certain way. You'll be like, that was a little much. Let's pull back the crescendo a little bit. And then you'll be like, maybe I pulled it back a little bit too much. And it'll be like, maybe I should lean on this particular note a little bit more. Maybe that will create the effect that I want. That experimentation takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of doing it on your own in the comfort and in the privacy of your own practice session. What I want to say is, for those of you who are learning nuance, expression, style in a lesson and it feels weird to you, just know that even if you don't do it super well in the first few lessons, as long as you do your best and you kind of get a rough idea of what you're supposed to do, you can do the rest of it in your practice session and it's totally fine. Experimenting with expression, that part of leveling up in your playing is a very private experience, and you really need to allow yourself the space and the time to do it when no one's listening to you and no one's watching you. I think this is partially why artists are so introverted and private anyway. It's because you need that space and that time to really kind of like delve into expression without being judged. You are constantly molding and changing things and experimenting to see like what happens if you do this, what happens if you do that. Like, oh, when I do this, it doesn't sound Baroque anymore, but this is supposed to sound like a Baroque piece, you know, etc., etc. Those are my thoughts, my most recent thoughts about leveling up in playing an instrument. What is your experience both as a teacher and a student? I would love to know. In any case, if you like this video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. Also hit that bell icon because YouTube is broken. If you want to catch me on my social media, they are listed down below. And if you want to hang out with me every other week, I am on Patreon. My last video is over here, which I will put a link to up here for you guys. But other than that, I'll see you guys next week. Bye. So I'm in a different part of the house right now because it is just so warm upstairs that I can't even make a video up there right now. It's literally a sauna. I did get permission to film just like right around here in this little corner. Brought my friend down. Got this guy here. Got this macaron here. I kind of have a thing for food stuffies. They're cute. Okay,